I'm still reeling from the fallout of that Christmas, and honestly, sometimes I wonder if I went too far. But then I remember the cold, calculated way they planned to tear me down, and the doubt just evaporates. You have to tell me, was I wrong for what I did? Because when my mom called me that night, screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear, "Where are you?" all I could do was lean back, take a slow sip of the sparkling cider I'd poured myself, and ask her, with the calmest, most measured voice I could muster, "Did you enjoy my gift?" The silence on the other end of the line was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard, a symphony of stunned, miserable disbelief, and it was the sound of my freedom. I want you to listen to the entire story, to every agonizing detail that led up to that single, perfect moment, and then you tell me if I was the villain, or if I was simply the one who finally broke the cycle of toxicity. Tell me if you would have done the exact same thing, given the chance. The story really begins not on Christmas Day, but months earlier, with a tradition that had become less a celebration and more a form of systemic emotional abuse. The annual family Christmas dinner and gift exchange. My family, my mother, Carol, my father, Robert, my older sister, Jessica, and her husband, Mark, were, and I say this without hyperbole, emotional vampires. I, Daniel, the youngest by 8 years, was the designated scapegoat, the punching bag, the perpetual disappointment. I'd always been the artistic one, the one who chose a creative career over a respectable one, which in their eyes meant I was lazy, poor, and a failure. Jessica, on the other hand, was the golden child, married to a lawyer, 2 perfect kids, a house in the suburbs. She was the yardstick by which my worthlessness was constantly measured. The lead up to Christmas was always a minefield, but this year I felt a particular tension in the air. I had recently gotten a major promotion at the animation studio where I worked. It was a huge deal, a significant bump in salary, and a managerial role, but I hadn't told them yet. I knew if I did, they would instantly minimize it. "Oh, that's nice, but does it pay for a down payment on a house?" Or Jess's husband is making that much on his first-year bonus. So I kept it quiet, hoping to at least enjoy one family gathering without the inevitable career interrogation. A little background on the gifts, which were really just tools for veiled insults. My mother would always give me something cheap and overtly practical, like a set of $10 kitchen towels, while Jessica would get a piece of jewelry that cost more than my rent. Last year, Jessica gave me a book on personal finance for dummies in front of everyone, pretending it was a thoughtful gesture while my dad snickered. The year before, Mom had gifted me a framed print of an inspirational quote about pulling oneself up by the bootstraps. The message was always clear: you are not enough and you are a drain on. Family, I always played along, forcing a tight, painful smile, saying thank you, and swallowing the lump of humiliation. But this year something had shifted inside me. Maybe it was the confidence from the new job, or maybe I was just finally burned out on their cruelty. I decided this year things would be different. I would not be the butt of the joke. The opportunity for me to intercept their plan came purely by chance. 2 weeks before Christmas, my sister, Jessica, called me, practically in tears. Her internet was down, and she had a critical work deadline. I'm reasonably tech-savvy, and her house was only 20 minutes away, so despite my instinct to refuse, I went over. When I fixed the router, she insisted I stay for a glass of wine. I agreed, thinking I could get some rare, non-judgmental sister time. While she went to the kitchen to grab the wine, her phone was sitting on the coffee table. Suddenly, a new notification popped up. A text message from my mother, Carol. It wasn't a private chat. It was a group text titled The Christmas Intervention. The word intervention sent a shiver down my spine. My curiosity, and frankly, my paranoia, got the better of me. I picked up the phone, and what I read felt like a physical punch to the gut. The message thread was long, starting with my mother. "We need to handle Daniel this year. He needs a reality check before he completely ruins his life. I spoke to Robert, and he agrees. My father, Robert, had replied, good. He's had enough time to find himself. We're doing this at the gift exchange in front of Mark. I want him to know what real success looks like. The next message was from Jessica, and it was the most venomous. I have the perfect gift. It's subtle but devastating. I'm giving him a single, high-quality, branded coffee mug, but the card will say, for when you finally start a job that requires you to wake up before noon. And Dad, you give him the framed lease agreement for the new office building you and Mark just invested in. We need to make the comparison stark. No more coddling. They had meticulously planned a coordinated attack. It wasn't just a casual jab. It was a full-scale, malicious attempt to humiliate me and publicly label me a loser in front of the one person, Mark, whose opinion they truly cared about. They were going to use the sacred, family-oriented day to execute an emotional mugging. I felt sick. My hands were shaking as I put the phone back down just as Jessica walked back in with the wine. I managed to paste a fake smile on my face, drank the wine quickly, and made my excuses. I don't remember the drive home. That night I didn't sleep. The word devastating kept echoing in my head. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about 2 decades of being the family fool, the punching bag for their collective insecurities. This was the moment. I could either show up, take the blow, and let the cycle continue, or I could finally, irrevocably, break it. I decided on the latter, but I wouldn't resort to screaming or an emotional breakdown. I would be precise. I would be surgical. I would give them a gift that was truly devastating, a gift they would never forget, and one that would force them to confront the true cost of their cruelty. I knew their entire financial world was intertwined. My father, Robert, was a successful, but not spectacularly wealthy, business owner. He had his own company, a small manufacturing firm, but he had leveraged everything, including his house, to invest in a major real estate venture with his son-in-law, Mark. This investment, the one Jessica wanted my dad to use to humiliate me, was their financial pride and joy, the foundation of their retirement and Jessica's future inheritance. Mark was the junior partner in the real estate deal, handling the legal side. I knew that they had just finalized the contracts for a new, huge commercial building purchase. That contract was their entire world. The first step was to utilize my professional skills. As an animation manager, I work with high-level software, including incredibly sophisticated digital forensics and data management tools. I had once, years ago, fixed my dad's laptop after a bad virus, and I knew he wasn't tech-savvy. I knew his password was still his old dog's name and the year he bought his first car. Pathetic, yes, but predictable. I realized what I had to do. I had to access his financial records. Morally dubious, perhaps, but after reading their plans, I considered it justifiable defense. I needed to find their weakness, the lever I could pull. I spent the next week quietly getting access to everything. My dad's banking information, the joint accounts with my mom, and most importantly, the digital copies of the real estate investment contracts he kept backed up on his cloud drive. I was horrified and fascinated by what I found. They weren't just well off, they were living on a razor's edge. My dad had overextended himself massively. The new real estate contract contained a clause, buried deep in the technical language, relating to a local zoning ordinance that was about to be changed. If the building purchase closed before the ordinance change was filed, they were fine. If it closed after, a significant, a truly massive, tax penalty would be applied retroactively to the sale, essentially wiping out their profit and sinking my dad's company in the process. Mark, the hotshot lawyer, had been so focused on the sale price and the big picture that he'd missed the local government's schedule for the zoning update, or perhaps thought they could push closing through before the filing. My gift started to take shape. I knew the closing date for the real estate deal was scheduled for December 24th, Christmas Eve. The zoning change was scheduled to be filed on December 26th. My parents and Jessica had meticulously planned to humiliate me on the 25th. I needed to move the closing date, not push it forward. That would save them. I needed to delay it just by a few days, enough to land it squarely after the zoning change was filed. But how could I, the supposed family failure, interfere with a multi-million-dollar real estate deal handled by a professional lawyer? I couldn't just walk into the bank. I had to be subtle. I thought about what could happen on Christmas Eve that would halt a major legal closing. The answer was simple, an unexpected yet seemingly routine legal hurdle. Using my access, I didn't steal money or sabotage the business directly. That would be messy and traceable. Instead, I did something far more sophisticated. I fabricated a single, official-looking document. I created a fake amendment to the purchase agreement, a notice of environmental easement, that seemed to have been overlooked in the initial title search. I used my skills to make it look utterly convincing with official-looking stamps and signatures. The language was dense, legalistic, and perfectly confusing. The amendment was designed not to kill the deal, but to inject a massive amount of uncertainty and fear. It stated that a small, previously unknown environmental restriction had been placed on a corner of the property, potentially limiting future development and requiring a mandatory 3-day legal review and title correction period before the final funds could be dispersed. I knew Mark, being the conservative lawyer he was, would see that document an hour before closing and hit the brakes immediately. No lawyer in his right mind would risk their license on a multi-million-dollar deal with a last-minute environmental easement notice. Now for the delivery. I couldn't just email it from a burner account. That was too obvious. I needed to deliver this gift to the most influential person at the closing, the one who would act on it instantly, Mark. And the best way to do that was through my own mother and father, completely unwittingly. I wrapped a simple, elegant box. Inside, I placed a USB drive, the kind that looks like a fancy pen, and a handwritten card. The card read, "Mom and Dad, I know you value Mark's success so much. I wanted to give you something to help him further his career. This is a very sensitive document. Please give this only to Mark, and tell him it's an urgent, critical piece of legal correspondence that came to my work address by mistake and needs his immediate professional attention. Do not, under any circumstances, open it. Merry Christmas." It was a perfect plan. They would see it as me finally being useful, perhaps a little naive, but ultimately trying to help the golden child, Mark. The instructions were strict. Give it only to Mark. Do not open it. Critical. Their greed and need for Mark's success would ensure they followed the instructions to the letter. They would rush it to him on Christmas Eve morning, and the moment Mark plugged in the drive to see what urgent correspondence it contained, he would find the fake easement notice. He would be forced to delay the closing by 3 days to protect himself and his firm from liability. 3 days was all I needed. The 3-day delay would push the closing date past the December 26th zoning change filing. That was my gift. The gift of a massive, life-altering tax penalty that would ensure their real estate investment would hemorrhage money, potentially sinking my father's entire financial life and completely destroying Jessica's inheritance. It was brutal, I know, but so was their plan for me. Christmas Eve arrived. I called my mom and told her I couldn't make it to the dinner that night or the exchange the next day. I said I had a last-minute, non-negotiable work trip that came up, a total lie. I told her I had already left the special gift for Mark on their front porch, and reiterated, with a fake tone of panicked urgency, the exact instructions. "It's critical, Mom. Mark needs to see it before his closing tomorrow. It's a mistake I found, a major legal error." My mother, true to form, didn't ask about my trip or my health. She only cared about the major legal error that might affect Mark's success. She barely said goodbye before rushing to get the package. I spent Christmas Day alone in my apartment, watching old movies, eating takeout, and enjoying a silence that was far more peaceful than the forced, toxic merriment I would have endured. I imagined the scene at their house, the disappointment that their scheduled humiliation of me was foiled, followed by the quiet, creeping anxiety of what I had given Mark. My phone started ringing at exactly 7:00 p.m. on Christmas night. It wasn't Mark, it was my mother. I let it ring for a few seconds before answering. Her voice wasn't the usual passive-aggressive sigh. It was pure, unadulterated fury, laced with panic. "Daniel, where are you? You're not answering Jessica. You're not answering your father. What did you do?" I could hear my father shouting in the background, a rare display of vocal distress from him. The sound of their world crumbling was strangely intoxicating. I pictured them gathered in the living room, the beautiful Christmas tree lights twinkling, the half-eaten turkey on the dining room table, and the atmosphere thick with disaster. Mark had clearly spent Christmas Day confirming the disaster that was my gift. He would have discovered the easement was fake, but not before the real closing date had passed and the 3-day delay was already in motion. He would have realized he couldn't undo the delay, and the full weight of the tax penalty, triggered by the December 26th filing, would be settling over them all like a toxic fog. He would have had to explain to my father that the multi-million-dollar investment was now a multi-million-dollar liability. The planned intervention had backfired into a genuine, life-altering catastrophe. I want you all to really think about this moment. I was sitting there, listening to the shrieking embodiment of every painful memory, every condescending comment, every planned humiliation, and I was holding the antidote in my hand. So that's the situation I was in. I had the power to reveal my revenge, or I could play coy and let them stew in their misery. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confessed your plot and explained why? Or would you have simply let them suffer the consequences of their own making? What's the right line between justice and cruelty? I took a deep breath, and I maintained my composure. My mother, still screaming on the line, said, "Mark said that document you gave him. It's a disaster, Daniel. It caused the deal to be pushed back. What did you put on that USB? The closing is now after the tax filing. It's ruined. Tell me you didn't know." Her voice cracked on the last word, the perfect blend of terror and desperate hope that their son, the failure, wasn't actually the architect of their downfall. And that's when I gave her my answer. I repeated the question calmly and clearly. Did you enjoy my gift, the silence? It stretched for what felt like an eternity. When she finally spoke, her voice was a strangled whisper. You did this, you knew. This was your revenge. I didn't confirm or deny it directly. I simply said, Mom, you and Dad and Jessica have been giving me gifts every Christmas for 20 years. They were always designed to remind me how little you thought of me. This year, I decided to give you a gift that truly reflected the depth of your contempt. Something expensive, something unforgettable, something that would force you to face the actual cost of your cruelty. I paused, letting the implication sink in. Enjoy the consequences of your Christmas intervention plan. You wanted to give me a reality check. I'm just returning the favor. Tell Mark I hope he appreciates the time. Critical correspondence. Then I hung up. I turned my phone off. I didn't speak to any of them for weeks. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. My father's manufacturing business, which was leveraged against the successful completion of the real estate deal, started to founder. The enormous, unexpected tax penalty made the entire investment toxic. Mark, facing a huge loss and a clear negligence claim from my father, had to walk away from the investment and faced professional scrutiny. Jessica's perfect, privileged life started to fray as the reality of losing her inheritance and watching her husband's career implode set in. My parents, suddenly staring down financial ruin, were forced to sell their large, expensive house. The Christmas intervention group chat was their last successful coordination. When I finally turned my phone back on a month later, I had hundreds of missed calls and texts, mostly from Jessica, alternating between threats of lawsuits and pathetic pleas for help. I ignored them all. I didn't gloat, I didn't engage, and I didn't explain the intricacies of the fake easement. I had made my statement. I had drawn a line in the sand with a financial shockwave that they couldn't ignore. The great irony is that their years of calling me a failure, a financial drain, and a lazy artist meant that they never, for 1 second, suspected I was intelligent enough, or skilled enough, or even cruel enough to pull off something so perfectly calculated. They had created the monster they finally faced. I learned a few things from that terrible Christmas. First, silence is the most potent form of power. Second, sometimes the only way to escape a toxic family structure is to dismantle it completely. Third, revenge, when served cold and legally sound, has a certain satisfying elegance. I'm financially secure now, living in a new city, focused on my career. My new promotion is going wonderfully. I didn't save them, I didn't offer a bailout. I simply let them reap what they had sown. They lost everything they valued, their financial security and their public image, and the cause of it was the very thing they were trying to prevent, a desperate, brilliant act of defiance from. Family black sheep. I have no regrets. The humiliation they planned would have been temporary. The humiliation I delivered is permanent, a constant, crushing weight that reminds them every single day of the cost of their scorn. If you've ever been the scapegoat, the disappointment, the one who just couldn't measure up, then you know exactly how I felt that night. Sometimes you have to be the villain in someone else's story to finally become the hero in your own. Like this video if you were on my side in this horrible situation. And subscribe for more stories like this where the underdog finally gets their moment of perfect retribution. I want to read your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Was my gift too much, or was it exactly what they deserved? I'll see you all in the next story.